welcome back to data analysis in Excel. Nice to have you. We just want to, before we go to the next topic, which is basic functions, I just want to solve these two examples in case you had any issues solving them, right? So we want to calculate the percentage of total sales for each sales rep. So first of all, I need to calculate total sales, for each person before I can calculate percentage of total sales. So I can either come here and, type my sum formula one by one and type my alt equals here, right? But there's a great trick in Excel. Once you have a rectangular range like this, select the rectangular range and also select the adjacent cells after the rectangular range, then press alt and equals, and automatically the formulas will be updated for you. You can just double click to ensure that it's picking the right range, and you can see, yeah. So given that we have the total sales already, we just want to calculate the percentage of total sales for each sales rep. In other words, I want to check for Dio. Out of 12,000, Dio did 1.5. What's the percentage of this? So I can say I'm going to take this value and I'm going to divide it by this value. Again, I have to ask myself, because if I just do this and I drag down, I will see that I'm getting division by error and by zero error. Because if I come here and I double click, I can see that this is dividing by this, which is zero basically because it's empty. So Control Z, Control Z. Let's take that one by one. This cell here, I'm going to ask myself, do I want to, as I copy this formula down, is this cell going to come down? So yes, it is. So I can leave it. Divided by this very cell here. Now, if I copy this formula down, I want this cell to remain constant all through. So I can press my F4 to lock it. Of course, I could decide to lock only the the row, that's row 94. But it really doesn't matter that I'm locking the column because I'm not copying to the right. So I can just press my Control Enter now, and I can click and drag down. Now, once you click and drag, most times you discover that your formatting will go away. To remove that effect of formatting, you can click on this box here and say fill without formatting. Once I click on that, my formatting comes back. That was there before. And I can see for each person, I can see the percentage of the total that the person sold. Okay, the next question says calculate the percentage of total sales for each sales rep in each individual month. In other words, I want to know what is Dio's sales as a percentage of January, what is Dio's sales in February as a percentage of total February, and so on and so forth. So I can write one formula. In fact, this time I'm going to use the trick of selecting the entire range first, typing my formula and pressing Control Enter. So let's do that. I'm going to say equals this 109, which is Dio's sales in January. Again, if I copy this formula down, I want this range to go down. If I copy it across, I want it to go across. So this is a perfectly relative reference. I can leave it. I'm going to divide it by total January sales. Now, if I copy this formula down, I don't want this range to come down to this empty cell or this empty cell. So I know that I need to freeze row 94. However, if I copy it across, I want this to move from January to February to March to April, which means that the columns B, C, D have to be relative. So this means I'm just locking the row. So I press F4 and then F4 again. I can press Control and Enter. And I can see automatically month on month who did best and all. So that's a very simple way of calculating percentage of total. You can take the value and then freeze the total value. All right, let's look at the next topic. We're dealing with basic functions in Excel. And it's important to know how to use these functions. These are very very simple functions. You can read the notes for clarity, but we'll just dive in. We have data set here. We have January to December data. We've collated our data, and these are the numbers that we have. However, look at the data set we have. We have a blank cell that has nothing. We have text here, and we also have numbers. And I want to calculate all of these from this data. Okay, so let's start at total quantity. Of course, you know that there's a sum function. The sum function is what you use for calculating totals. So I can say equals sum, right, and tab, or I can say alt equals, and it will guess wrong because it was not just close to the data, but I can redirect it and say select this range, and I press enter. So this is my my sum function that gives me the total. Now, for counting, there are different formulas I can use for counting, and This is very important to know the difference between all of these formulas. To count numeric values, that is, I just want to count the numbers. How many numbers are in this range? There's a function called count. If I take equals count. If I look at the description, it says count the number of cells in a range that contain numbers. So if I select this, if I press tab to select it, then I select this range. Okay, count is I go to answer the question, how many numbers are in this range? If I close and I press enter, I can see that there are 10 numbers. Even though January to December is supposed to be 12, we only have 10 numeric values. So this blank is not counted and this text is not counted. Now, what if I wanted to know how many received responses? In other words, whether numeric or text. That means anybody that did not say anything. In other words, any cell that is blank, I don't want to use it. There is a function called count A, right? This counts the number of cells in a range that are not empty. So if I select count A and I select this range, right? I'm asking the question whether it's numeric or it's text. As long as it's not a blank cell, how many values are here? Once I close and I press enter, I can see that I have 11. So if I delete this cell, for instance, this becomes 10 and this becomes 9. If I control Z to go back, this updates automatically. Now, of course, if there is a function that counts how many cells are filled, there's definitely a function that counts how many cells are blank. And of course, that function is called the count blank function. You can see it here. Once I select it, I just select my range, close, and I press enter. Count blank is 1. Now, it's very important for you to know that a space is not a blank cell. So, for instance, if I come here, instead of 150, I'm going to press a space. Now, I've just typed in a space and I press enter. The number of blank cells is still 1. Even though this looks like it's blank, there's actually something there. If I double click into the cell, you can see that there is a character here, which is this space character. So that character is regarded as text. So count blank means that it's counting if there is absolutely nothing inside the cell. Like this main now, there's nothing inside. If I double click, you can see that there's nothing there at all. So, but if there is anything, a space or any character, anything is going to be counted as text, and that will be part of the count R function. So let me Control Z, Control Z, Control Z to go back. Okay, now let's find the average quantity. Now, when you have data like this, there are two ways of calculating average based on what you want to achieve. Now, if you just want to calculate the average of the received values, that is those that give you numeric values, you want to calculate the average of those numbers. That's when you can use the average function. Let me go back here. It says returns the average of its arguments, which can be numbers or names, arrays or references that contains numbers. I've not dealt with names and arrays. We'll deal with that very soon. But basically what we're saying here is this average, I can select this range. And once I select this range, Excel is going to calculate the average of only the numeric values. Excel is not going to take this total. You know, average is find the total divided by the count. So Excel is not going to take this total of 741 and divide it by 12. It's going to take total of 741 and divide it by 10. It's going to skip this empty cell and it's going to skip this text cell. It will only deal with the numeric values. So if I press enter, I can see that the average here is 74.1, which is 741 divided by 10 if instead of divided by 12. So if you want to assume that this is 0 and this is 0, you cannot use this formula because you're going to get the wrong answer. If you want to assume that this is 0 and this is 0, you have to use another method in terms of taking the total and then dividing it by 12. So if I say equals sum of all this, and I close the bracket and I divide it by 12. So this is a way of you are basically simulating that anything that is not numeric is 0. If I press Control Enter, this tells me that sorry, I said 2. Let me go back to F2 and change from 2 to 12. Control Enter. So you can see that the average quantity now is less than this because this is considering only 10 values, but this is considering 12, including these 2, and assuming that they are empty. Okay, to calculate the maximum, there's just a function called max, max tab, and I can just select the range, and that gives you a maximum of 150. To calculate the minimum as well, there's a function called min equals min tab, and I can select this, press enter as well. Now, to get these functions, you can go to the home under the auto. This is the Autosum button, but there is a drop down here. If I click on this drop down, you can insert Autosum. It can insert an average, a count, a max, and a mean, right? But I don't think anybody should ever have to go there. Once you know the formulas, you can just type it in and move on. But if you like using the Autosum, that's there for you. All right, let's look at this first example. You have these statistical, you have these quantities, and you want to calculate these again. So it's basically going on what we just did. You can try this on your own. If you have any issues, please let me know. But definitely, it's just a repetition of this example here. So let me come down here and see what we have here. Okay, so we have Lacon's Bakery. If you go back to the first first example that we did in this class, in this course rather, we had a bakery where we saw the quantity, the unit price, the cost, and the unit transport. So we're looking at that bakery again. If you remember when we were doing this, we didn't freeze any cells here. We didn't do any cell referencing here. But now that we understand cell referencing, we know that we can find this easily by applying cell references. So what notice that revenue is quantity times unit price. Product cost is quantity times unit cost. Transport is quantity times transport. Commission is quantity times unit commission. So I can see here that all I need to do is to take this column and multiply it by each of these numbers to get revenue, product cost, transport, and commission. So I can say my equals this revenue, this quantity rather. I'm taking quantity. Revenue is quantity times unit price. So this quantity, if I copy this formula down, I want this to come down. If I copy it across, I want to remain on column B. So I press F4, F4, and F4. So I've locked column B times the unit price. Now this unit price, when I copy it down, I want it to come down. If I copy it across, I want it to move from unit price to unit cost. So this has to be a totally relative reference. If you didn't get this, please go and watch the previous video and try to see if you can understand that. So control enter, and I can select this, drag this down, and drag this across. If I come down to this last cell, I double click, I can see it's picking the right quantity and it's picking the right unit commission to calculate total commission, which is good. And of course, I know that my total profit will be the revenue minus the sum of this. So I can say equals revenue minus the sum tab of these three cells. So what this is saying is take the revenue and then subtract the sum of all these cost items. I close my brackets, control enter, and that gives me this value. I can click and drag down. So now we want to calculate all these statistics for each of these columns. For the total, I can just press my alt equals. It gives me this extra cell I don't want. I select just this cell and press enter. For the monthly average, I can use my average function, right? Tab, select the range. In fact, one thing I know is because in Excel there are many ways to make your work faster. This range B63 to B68, I'm going to use it in all these formulas. So I can select the range, clicking and drag, and I can copy that range, right? Close my bracket and I press enter. Now when I come here and say equals count, tab, I can press Ctrl V and it puts in that range because I copied it. Now once it's just one formula, I don't need the second bracket, I can press enter. Maximum equals max, tab, Ctrl V to paste in the range, enter. The same with minimum, tab, Ctrl V and enter. Then there's a range. Range is maximum minus minimum. That's how I calculate range. Maximum minus minimum. So I can just take the 69 and subtract the 15. Control enter. Now I can select all these, come here and drag to the right. Okay, so I have my average cost, I have the average transport, I have the average revenue, and so on and so forth. And I also have the maximum and minimum values month on month. So of course you cannot add up unit cost and unit price. So I can just copy this and select this range here, and I can paste it, and here I can see my totals. So this is very straightforward. Please, if you don't understand this, try to watch the video again, or you can contact me for more guidance. So this is another example for you. In this case, you have 12 months, you have the quantity, the unit cost, unit transport, and the likes. So you have to fill in these values, find the total profit, and find the profit growth month on month. Remember, we did this in the previous class where we said profit growth is going to be the new divided by the old, then minus 1. That'll give you the percentage profit change, right? So let's try to do that, and I'll see you in the next class.